Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Caroline Woods. Today we're going to explore why offering a retirement plan is a true benefit to both employers and employees. So joining me for this conversation is Renee Grimm. She's Senior Vice President of the Retirement Plan Division at Capital Group. And again, before we actually start, I want to remind everyone that we want to hear from you. So please use the text chat to the right of your screen, the text tab or the chat tab, to post questions and engage in the discussion. We'll incorporate as much as we can from the chat into our session today. Also, a reminder to answer the poll question in the poll tab if you have not already. But let's get started. Renee, it's so good to see you. So good that you're going to be joining us for this conversation. And just to start, I think this will probably give us a clue into the poll answer. But what is the current state of retirement plans being offered in small businesses? Are most offering them to their employees at this point?
That's a great question. I love where we're starting, Caroline. So really, yeah, let's start with addressing the poll. And really, before getting into that, thanks for having us here. We're excited to talk about small business solutions. It certainly is a passion point for me. So the poll, 43 million Americans are uncovered by a corporate retirement plan when employed by a small business. And I think that's a really great temperature gauge for where we're at today. We know we have a savings gap in the United States, but one of the key ways to really be able to save enough for retirement is through a qualified employer-sponsored vehicle. So giving a little bit more stats, there was a survey done by ShareBuilder 401k, and they surveyed 500 business owners. And when we say small business, we're talking 100 employees or less. And they found that only 26% offer some sort of employer-sponsored retirement plan. So I think current state is we need more options for employees and employers. We want them to have more confidence in knowing that there are a lot of different solutions available to them in the marketplace. I know we'll talk about those today.
Yeah, I'm curious how the Great Resignation is changing that, or could change that 26% figure. Has this turned into a need to have versus a nice to have benefit in order to retain employees?
I would say it is, and it has been a need to have, but the need to have is becoming that much more important today. So when we look at plan sponsors, what might keep them from offering a plan, what employees are looking for, one thing that's always been paramount is offering a corporate plan can be a great talent and acquisition as well as retention tool for small businesses. So when we think about what is out there or how the Great Resignation is impacting that, there are a lot of different statistics. So for instance, the Bureau of Labor Statistics in April had published that 4.4 million Americans left their job in the month alone. And the reason that's very daunting is it came down just slightly from its high the previous month, where 4.5 million Americans left their job. And then when we couple it with surveys that have been done for what employees are looking for, Willis Towers Watson did a study back in April, and they found quite a significant change over the last 12 years. 6 out of 10 employees say that they want a corporate retirement plan. And in fact, they view it as being such an important benefit, they actually consider it to be more valuable than looking for another place of employment that might close that income gap that they were looking for. And the reason this is a compelling change is because only 41% of employees felt that way back in 2010. So thinking about the Great Resignation, employees are looking at overall compensation, benefits, work flexibility, and this can be a key consideration in their employment decisions.
Why else do you think it needs to be a priority?
Well, there's never a great time to avoid investing. It's only ever a great time to start investing. And we have a common phrase, it's time in the market, not timing. So a lot of people will think it's not a great time, or it's not the beginning of the year, I can't put a plan in place. And that's absolutely not the case. You can open a plan anytime. But there are a lot of advantages to having something in place sooner rather than later to allow people to start putting more money to work. And of course, get some tax benefits and advantages for the employer as well as the employee. And some of those are hopefully going to be more fruitful as we see some pending legislation potentially come through.
So before we continue, just a reminder, please feel free to submit your questions in the chat tab. We want to hear from you. We want to make sure your questions are answered. There's also the poll, which we sort of gave away, but still interested to hear what you all think. I think the majority at this point, 76% of people who have responded think 43 million do not have access to a retirement plan. So it seems pretty in line with what we were talking about. But let's talk about why companies aren't offering plans. What are some of the hurdles or obstacles that they think they face?
Yeah, myriad of reasons, Caroline. So I've been in this business for 15 years, and in my time working with plan sponsors, I probably met with thousands of them. And there are some age-old reasons where they see the barriers to entry with a corporate plan. Some of those might be, as a small business owner, your cheap cook and bottle washer. They have so many competing priorities. They're thinking about healthcare. Some of that's mandated. We may potentially end up in an environment with mandated corporate retirement plans as well. They're very concerned about inflation. They're trying to keep their doors open through the pandemic. We also have, just rising cost of work, as I mentioned, inflation, and the looming recession, or arguably the recession we may be in, has certainly proven to be a reason for many employers. However, three key reasons have bubbled up recently. ShareBuilder again did another survey. They found 58% of small business owners think that their business is too small. And I think today we'll discuss some options for single people all the way up to options for tens of thousands of employees. 32% think that they can't afford a match. And the other 24% think that having a corporate plan is simply going to be too expensive. So we can certainly dispel some of those myths today too.
So I guess the big question then, would that not be the case? Cost shouldn't be prohibitive when employers are starting to think of the different types of plans that are available. What are those different types of plans available to fit small businesses' needs and their employees' needs?
There are quite a few, actually. So I'll cover a couple in no particular order. For small businesses, usually ones that are closely held, let's talk about a SEP plan. It's a simplified employee pension plan. Kind of brings me a memory of my dad. My dad was self-employed for many years, over 20 years. He had a SEP plan. Happened to be with American Funds, of course. But he had a SEP plan, and he was able to take up to 25% of his net business income and save it for himself as a participant. And that was his main retirement vehicle. There's also something that's great for small businesses called the Simple Plan, and that stands for a savings incentive match plan for employees. There is a match or profit sharing required 2 out of every 5 years for an employer, but these are typically easy to administrate and very low cost employer-sponsored plans. There are also some plans that, believe it or not, Caroline, might sound too good to be true. There are payroll deduct and ACH IRA options that can also be coupled with something like a college savings plan. So you're able to give your employees the opportunity to save for retirement while also maybe saving for college for themselves, their kids. And then you get to the most robust of the solutions, which is the 401k or the profit sharing plan. Highest contribution limits, most flexible in plan design, but is typically going to be the most expensive of the different type of corporate retirement plans.
So how should companies go about choosing the right combination of solutions? Because there are plenty of options, but that could also seem maybe intimidating for some of these small businesses.
It absolutely is. It can be very intimidating, even for some of the most sophisticated plan sponsors. So number one, I would always encourage that a business owner reach out. If you're already working with a financial professional, ask that professional if corporate retirement plans are a meaningful part of their business. And if not, is there someone who can help them? These financial professionals, wherever you are in the country, there are plenty out there. I don't want to leave anybody out, but to give you an idea, I'm talking Merrill Lynch, Edward Jones, Morgan Stanley, Wells Fargo, UBS, I could go on. These individuals can help you identify, but there are some important questions that they might want to ask. Would you like me to run through a couple of those to keep in mind?
Yeah, sure. We would most certainly. Please run through those.
Okay, so a couple of key factors to separate what type of plan might be best for you and your employees. Some types offer a Roth, right? Pay tax later, avoid tax today. Others might want a traditional vehicle. So which is important to you? Do you want to offer both? Is low cost and easy administration more important than higher contribution limits, more flexibility in plan design? Or something like a match going to be a make or break? Would you like to have the option to not make a match or profit sharing to your employees and merely defer salaries? All of these things are going to be really important in funneling through the different solutions I mentioned to identify which is best. And if any of our attendees would like to visit AmericanFunds.com, there's a great piece. It's a small business retirement plan solutions piece that has this decision tree followed by some case studies to help them understand how these plans work and what types of businesses they make sense for.
Okay, so just a reminder, please feel free to submit your questions. We want to make sure that Renee gets those answered. Feel free to answer the poll. Maybe you didn't catch the answer at the top of this, but just in terms of, there obviously are so many small businesses that don't offer retirement plans at this point. So if some of those business owners are on this, or, you know, at the management level, and they're considering it, the most important consideration when choosing retirement plan should be what? If they're just basically starting at square one, what should they consider?
This might surprise some people, but choose your investments first. The investments are what will actually help your money grow over time. It's not the record keeping. It's not the plan design. We would actually argue that when not just selecting your investments, choosing something called a default investment, it covers you as the plan sponsor. If your employees don't know what to choose, they kind of get defaulted somewhere. And those are typically target date funds. We haven't talked about those in this session. I don't think we'll get too nitty gritty, but choosing your investments, who those providers or who that provider is really going to be the key driver to ensuring your success as an investor, but also, and importantly, that of your employees.
And I think in terms of small business owners, right now, we know there's a labor shortage. So many companies are short on workers. So I think it's also important to consider that maybe this doesn't require a robust HR team. It doesn't seem like, at least, because that would be something that maybe, you know, those people who aren't necessarily familiar with it might think. So I think that's an important point to consider as well. Right, Renee?
Most definitely. You know, depending on how your business is set up, typically, if you do have some administrative help, those are a lot of people that I would talk to when I was in the field. And the way I would sum it up for them, at least with respect to a 401k, if I were to ask you, hey, Caroline, is spending maybe 2 to 3 hours of your time over the course of the next 30 to 60 days to get this plan in place so you and your employees can save, would that be a worthwhile use of your time? And the majority of businesses would say yes. But to your point, if you don't have administrative staff, you don't have extra hands to help you, administrating these plans doesn't have to be a burden. There are people to help. That's why your financial professional and like a third-party administrator for a 401k plan specifically will be very, very helpful and critical partners for you in the success and efficiency of your plan. But it doesn't have to be a heavy lift.
Renee, we have a question from Nicolette here about why people leave assets behind and forget they have a plan with balances. So maybe in addition to the why, just if you have any recommendations of what people can do if they've done that.
Sure. Well, people leave balances behind for a lot of reasons. If it's a 401k, for instance, those are usually going to be larger pools of assets. And as a group plan, you may get some purchasing power. So Nicolette, for your question, you may know someone or see some of these balances left behind because these larger plans can actually purchase the same type of investments, perhaps at a lower cost than what you as an individual would be able to purchase through something like an individual retirement arrangement, an IRA. So this is, again, we're having a qualified financial professional look at your individual situation. Sometimes leaving your money behind at the plan is okay. And sometimes, depending on your personal needs, an IRA rollover might be a better fit for you. But there are all sorts of reasons people leave money behind.
All right. Well, thank you, Nicolette, for your question. Feel free for other people, joining us today. Please feel free to ask your questions. We want to make sure we get those answered. But in terms of timing, Renee, obviously the markets have been very volatile, especially this year. You know, for a few years, it was a great time to be invested, or some would argue any time is a good time to be invested, but it was a great time to check your balances, I guess I should say. And some might be a little bit more scared to do that this year. So I think in terms of timing, how does that factor in when we are in periods of extreme volatility, or maybe there's a market downturn? How should small businesses be considering that, the volatility of it all?
Sure. Well, this might sound like a contrary opinion, but I hold fast to the belief that volatility in a retirement plan is a great thing. And the reason why: most participants in a corporate plan are actually investing money according to their pay period. So let's just say biweekly, every 2 weeks. When we have periods of market volatility, sometimes the market price is high, sometimes it's low. But over time, what happens is you kind of get the average of those prices. But we feel better as investors when we're investing in a market that's always going up. And we think about this 12, 13-year bull run that we've had. It's a lot harder to make money when every 2 weeks the market's at a new high. So volatility can actually be a welcomed but sometimes uncomfortable perk of participating regularly in any sort of savings vehicle.
Renee, how do you determine who's the best provider for a 401k plan?
Depends on your needs. There are a lot of different ways that you can assess record keepers or providers, but I always said it this way: a record keeper, and I know we're using some industry jargon, a record keeper is the entity that's responsible for holding your assets, providing the statements, the website support, the participant phone services. I think looking at the pricing for that is really important. We're a fast belief that fixed fees are most important rather than asset-based fees. And what I mean by that, Caroline, is some providers might say, small business ABC has a $500,000 corporate plan. We're going to charge them 1% of assets. That means every 2 weeks when you and your employees put money to work, that record keeper's making more money, but they're doing the exact same job. So look at the pricing structure of the record keeper. What makes sense for you and your employees? And are they charging a fair and reasonable price for the services being delivered? But typically, all record keepers are offering very comparable services, Caroline.
And we focused a lot on the employers, but just in terms of the employees, what concerns are top of mind for American workers right now in this current environment?
There's a host of concerns. We could look at this generationally. Capital Group put out a survey last year called Women's Financial Futures, or Wisdom of Experience. And what we did is we surveyed over 2,000 women, and we looked at how maybe their finances and the way they were looking at investing and saving changed during the pandemic. And a couple of things really bubbled up from this. One, women of color and millennials. They want access to more financial professionals because they want to save more. They feel like they don't know who they can talk to. It hasn't been socialized for us to talk about things like compensation. What's in your portfolio, Caroline? How much do you have saved? To know whether you're on track or not. So being able to consider things like financial wellness programs for your employees, that can often be included with the record keepers that we talked about, but also things like debt and loan repayment. I mentioned the corporate sponsored 529 program. There are others that have student debt programs to pay down your student debt. Also, people are looking for things like work-life balance, and you might be thinking, how does this play into a corporate retirement plan? These are all things that come together as part of the overall benefits offering that employees are looking for. And the Willis Towers Watson survey that I mentioned, again, reminding them that seeing a corporate retirement plan often was enough to account for a gap in the income that they were hoping to receive. So this can be a massive talent acquisition and retention tool for employees because it's meeting a lot of their needs.
Renee, we have just a couple minutes left. I don't see any additional questions in the chat, but just in terms of key takeaways, you've offered so much good information, but anything else that you think is important to include while we still have a few minutes left, or any key takeaways that you really want the audience to walk away with from this conversation?
I want them to know that even though a lot of those fears might be out there, I'm not big enough, it's too expensive, I can't afford it, my employees won't participate. Talk to your employees, see if this is something that they would invest in or participate in. And even if they don't, for a business owner, this can be a great option. So what I want everyone to hear is now. Now is the time. If you think your business needs this, if you're looking for ways to save, you know your employees need the coverage as well, reach out to a financial professional, have the conversation. There's never a better time to start improving your own financial future.
All right, we'll leave it there. Renee, thank you so much for joining us, and thanks all of you for joining us as well.